Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick hands-on look at the ZimaBoard 2. This is essentially a DIY-style mini computer, which you can use for different projects, including as a NAS server. So if you link it up to other hard drives and SSDs, you can build your own local storage solution instead of relying on cloud options from Google or Amazon that may cost an extra subscription, since you own all of the data physically in front of you. So you can create your own mini cloud server in that way. Or if you enjoy tinkering with electronics and tech, you can use it for other projects as well. Kind of similar to products like the Raspberry Pi, offer a similar type of vibe, catering towards the enthusiast community. Now it does have the components though, like an entry-level mini computer, except there is no Windows operating system installed. Instead, they have a kind of Linux proprietary OS on here designed more for the NAS cloud storage experience, but you can also install regular Windows, Ubuntu, and other operating systems of your choice. It's running on an Intel N150 processor, which we have seen again in other Windows-enabled mini PCs previously, relatively cost-effective, and comes with 16 gigabytes of built-in RAM. And previously last year, we checked out their ZimaBlade, which is a less powerful, more entry-level version of the similar concept, which I also liked. It had a little bit more of a steampunk appearance, where the visor on the top also reveals some of the PCB and components that you can peek inside and see. So the ZimaBlade is a little bit lighter and even less expensive. But previously they also made the ZimaBoard 1, which looks something like this instead, with a black and orange accent running across it, compared to this time around with the aluminum chassis there in silver, maybe looking a little bit more polished, but overall the difference in terms of size and dimensions are still very similar, as you can see there. And here's also a quick comparison chart between the original ZimaBoard here on the left, ZimaBlade that came out in the middle, and now the ZimaBoard 2, the newest one over here on the right. So you can see in terms of processing power, it went from a slightly older Celeron N3450 slash N3350 on the ZimaBlade from previously, now to the aforementioned N150. Just as a rough frame of reference, the N3450 from previously, again this quad-core processor, scored under 2000 for multi-thread on Passmark, around 761 for single thread performance, compared to the newer N150 now gets around 5,500 on Passmark. As part of the Elder Lake generation of chips, it also is again upgrading to DDR5, so faster RAM for read and write speeds compared to DDR4 and DDR3 on the previous ZimaBoard 1 and the cheaper ZimaBlade. Furthermore, the previous models had a single Ethernet port, which has been expanded to 2 Ethernet ports on this one around, giving you a little bit more backup redundancy. And also in terms of the PCIe slot, it was previously using the 2.0 standard, now upgraded to PCIe 3.0. So those are some of the main differences across those 3 generations. Perhaps giving me a little bit more of Apple vibes, slightly more minimalistic. And otherwise, here's a peek into what that ZimaOS experience will be like. Again, you're able to remotely sign in and access things from a smartphone or a computer, similar to before, to quickly gauge how much storage you have remaining and then access those files from all of the connected devices. Backing up files from PC, Mac, Android, iOS, and it can support up to 32 TBs through the SSDs and hard drives that you connect using SATA. Now, of course, it doesn't come with the actual storage space, though. You still need to buy your own hard drives or SSDs to link into this. It just provides you with the guts, the kind of software, bare bones, as well as the processing for it to handle something like this. So it's like a DIY kit that gets you started. They also have a light app store as well for you to download additional applications if you want to use it for other purposes. Another practical example might be linking it to home security cameras and systems so you can store any looping video files onto the storage. Again, for different projects, having some modularity to it, adding network cards, additional GPUs. If you want to create your own AI type projects and tinker around with different things, you can snap on those accessories using PCIe. Pretty neat, actually. So it's going to be more powerful here compared to a Raspberry Pi 5, for example, that has more limited internals. That being said, it still isn't going to be a speed demon compared to the latest Mac M series chips and Intel i5s, i7s, i9s. This thing is still using a more energy efficient Celeron series chip because it is a fanless computer, at least by default. It's using passive cooling. You can add additional active fans yourself if you're trying to build that as part of your project to sustain better performance over the long term. Smaller projects that you're tinkering with, but the design as well as price mostly reflects that as well. So overall, again, some other examples of compatible OSs that we've mentioned there previously, as well as for configurations, you can see this is a quad-core processor, and for RAM, looks like there is a slightly lower end 8 gig version as well by default, as well as for eMMC, which is really just designed for holding the operating system, includes 32 or 64 gigs. Again, plugging in your own drives for expanding on the storage part, and using 10 watts for the TDP, so very energy efficient. It does have two USB 3.0 ports, in addition to supports mini display output at 4K 60 Hz. Pricing here starting at $219, although keep an eye out for any coupons as well as discounts which may become available. That is going to be just the initial kind of packing list of just the computer, power supply, as well as the SATA Y cable that you see here. And it looks like there is a small, maybe optional cooling fan if you want to just, again, improve the thermals a little bit more. About the same size of a phone, I would say, in terms of dimensions. You can also use it to stream back videos as well, building your own Minecraft server, so on and so forth. Relatively simple and straightforward. Here's kind of a ridiculous one with a GPU attached, just to serve as some final examples. Now, it looks like they also have some additional accessories that you can find as well, including hard drive racks, DisplayPort cables, but these are pretty much standard accessories that you can just pick up off the shelf yourself and then plug it into. You don't necessarily have to pick it up from ZimaBoard itself, but those are a couple of other options that you can pick between. Alright, so now taking a closer look at the unboxing as well as presentation. By the way, it looks like the box here also includes a little stand that you can also use to put it upright. Although one thing I will say is that there is no wireless connectivity module, at least built into the board by default. It is a little bit more stripped back in that sense. So if you're looking for Bluetooth, you're looking for Wi-Fi connectivity, you would have to plug that in yourself. Just keep that in mind. So here's the box itself, and kind of tearing out the very top lid. We have a note here that says, "Welcome to Zima Space." And then further down below here, you will find the single board server, the ZimaBoard 2, which actually has a, looks like strap, which is pretty easy to use for removing it from the very top there. It can also be reused in the future. Again, having no tape as part of the packaging, a little more eco-friendly. Crafted out as very thick cardboard carton. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And then down below here under 2, this is going to be the final accessories, power plugs for different countries and territories that you're in. Plus one of the included modules here is going to be the active fan. We also have a mini screwdriver kit included as well for more easily disassembling and attaching things. The power supply here is using a round barrel plug connection, as you can see here, and in terms of the power rating, it's going to be 12 volts, 5 amps, 60 watts. So relatively energy efficient because it is using, again, an Intel Celeron chip. And then, of course, the final plug there you can find for various countries and territories. And it looks like we do already have some cables for connecting to SSDs and hard drives. What is a little interesting, though, is that the I/O isn't using, say, USB Type-C for power, but rather a barrel plug. But having a Type-C port for maybe added versatility for connecting other accessories might be nice to see in a future version down the line, since that has become increasingly standardized across computers and phones over the past few years. And we can just pull off the orange strap there to gain access on the very top to the ZimaBoard. Looks like there's also going to be initial card introducing the product from Ice Whale Tech. And this was initially founded on Kickstarter back on the early ZimaBoard 1 days. It had pretty good success. Nice to see them continuing to provide incremental updates. And now we have just the ZimaBoard 2 itself. Let's take a look at that in a moment. We have a more detailed user guide here down below that also tells you a little bit more about how to set it up. And then on the very top here, this is the part that you can detach by tearing or using scissors, and then pop the ZimaBoard on the very top along with two 2.5-inch SSD drives for kind of a makeshift stand. So as aforementioned, once you have everything set up, it should look something like this, just popping into the stand, still giving you access to the I/O, including power, and then connecting to the drives without any problems. So anyways, taking a closer look here at the actual ZimaBoard 2 here next, what I can say is that the build quality has definitely improved versus the first-gen model. Now this entire thing is milled out of a pretty heavy, solid block of aluminum alloy. So it actually feels more dense than almost any other mini PC in this $200 price range I've seen previously. Even the Intel Nuke boxes are all built out of plastic to be lighter and a little bit lower cost, but this thing feels like it's built like a tank. If you drop it, it almost feels like a blunt weapon. So very good build, and the metal material might conduct and cool off heat a little bit more effectively as well. But anyways, there is no fan by default. Again, you can snap that in yourself. The screws, as you can see here, also giving off some Apple vibes with the silver colorway here. We have the new PCIe 3.0 slot, the two USB Type-A 3.0 ports, 2 Ethernet, as well as the mini display port, and then power. Finally, for SATA, we have on just the other end. Here it is next to an average-sized phone, having a 6.5-inch screen just to serve as an example. Again, not taking up too much space as you are putting it onto a desk. Also, a Raspberry Pi 5 inside of a smaller chassis will look something like this as well. So a little bit larger than a Raspberry Pi, but overall it still is within the same realm, I would say, of being a smaller, portable mini computer. Here's also a final look at the design on the back, additional screws there. And as you guys can see, what's interesting compared to a normal mini PC is that the actual interface has more of a primitive UI. It's like a terminal, not really designed to have a visual UI layer on top of it. Rather, it pops up an IP address when you connect it to internet using the Ethernet. Afterwards, you type that URL into any browser on the phone, tablet, or computer, and then their web UI pops up where you can access the device's connected memory in terms of storage, check out the system's specifications, any updates, set up virtual servers, including downloading other operating systems can also be done from there, and also downloading other applications, using it for different purposes that we mentioned previously, whether it's for entertainment, security cameras, and exploring other DIY use cases, including for programming and checking out some tinkering projects. You can find those examples in that app store, which continues to grow with additional examples. And if it's not sufficient and you want to use it for more than just simple file management remotely, you can also access the VM to partition the storage space to install Windows 10, for example, standard Linux, Ubuntu, for example, and find additional applications that might be a little bit larger in terms of selection if you don't find the current app list instead of their store to be sufficient. So overall, pretty easy to use, but just keep in mind that when you're plugging this thing in, it's really just connecting to the internet, and there is no GUI or GUI layer that you can see. It's just a blank terminal screen. You must then have another device with a standard browser to access the actual visual UI, where you can navigate around in settings, downloading things, managing the storage space from afar. As long as you're connected to the same internet source, the same router, you'll be able to locate this thing using that URL. So pretty interesting. It also means you don't necessarily have to plug in things like a keyboard or mouse, I guess, for the actual ZimaBoard, since it doesn't really have additional floating windows or anything like that. It's just a blank terminal that tells you when it's booted up. Now, similarly, there is no kind of manual kill switch on the hardware, which I found interesting. So it's really designed to just be on 24/7 like a router when you plug it in. Though I do think maybe having some type of reset key instead of having to unplug it from power could be an interesting addition also in the next generation model. So there is no dedicated power button. Again, the only way to turn it off is just to unplug it from the AC source. But yeah, I would say that overall performance for just simple file management, navigating around the remote app seems to be fluid and responsive enough, and the entire thing also remains pretty cool in terms of thermals if you're just doing very simple applications, like accessing files and documents. It actually doesn't need the cooling fan necessarily, unless you're trying to press it harder with some programming and DIY tasks related to maybe accessing ChatGPT locally on the server, building your own AI models. That will typically require a more powerful GPU for it to run more smoothly. But for basic usage, it actually felt cool to the touch after running it for about an hour or so. So there we have it. That's been just our hands-on first look at the ZimaBoard 2. And overall, I would say it's a refinement in terms of the build quality, faster performance, even though it still isn't a flagship computer, but I think it's sufficient for the type of DIY projects. Using it to host media files remotely doesn't require the most compute power there, and also keeps the cost relatively low. And a pretty neat option to consider if you want to create your own NAS server. This one does have a little bit more ways that you can tinker around with it, and their default ZimaOS does seem to be pretty well optimized to do those type of tasks. But at the same time, if you're expecting this to be a fully polished kind of consumer class device, which is meant to be an alternative to a Windows-based mini PC, then you'll probably want to look elsewhere. It really is designed for tinkering, as well as, again, those NAS-based projects, which it's been set up to do out of the box. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the ZimaBoard 2.